So this is the fifth in a series. They normally last about 8 weeks, but this is the fifth in a series that I'm doing on the idea of creating space. And we started off really, originally with a series on harmony, and we realized that the way you create harmony in the world is by creating space for those around us to be able to come into harmony with ourselves. And today we're sort of moving to the point where we're moving out and actually acting in the business of creating space. We've been preparing up to now, but now today I want to talk about actually moving, how we move out and create space for those people who are around us. To go out into the world and act is really to draw out the truth within ourselves and to bring it into the world. What we're talking about is drawing out the truth within ourselves and bringing it out into the world. A bit like Excalibur, the sword of the Arthurian legend, being drawn out of the stone and into the world. Now, when I was talking to Heather about this, she said, I didn't know anything about it, because she was educated in the American system, in India, funnily enough, but in the American system. And she said, I didn't know much about Arthur. So I thought, oh, help, So who actually does know? Put your hand up if you do know about the Arthurian legend a bit. Okay, a little bit. Well, I'll give you a little bit of a preview. Arthur, right, England was in a mess. And the prophecy was that whoever was able to draw the sword from the stone was the true king of England, who was going to unite the whole of England. And Arthur was just this bloke who was a page, and his knight, Sir Kay, said, I forgot my sword, go and get me my sword. And Arthur ran along, went through the forest and saw this sword in the stone and thought, I'll have that, and just pulled it out and brought it to, so here's your sword. And they're all amazed. They thought, that's Excalibur, you've drawn it from the stone. And so you better go and put it back again. So he goes and puts it back. And then Merlin comes along, who's the wizard, and says, did you draw the sword? And he then draws the sword out, and he's then acknowledged as the true king of England. And Excalibur represents that truth in the world that can actually unite everybody. And I'll talk a bit more about it, but that's for those of you who weren't educated. Excalibur was the sword that Arthur drew from the stone, and it was the sword of truth. And the legend had it that it was invincible, the sword, unless it was wielded in anger. And if you wielded Excalibur in anger, the sword broke. And there's a parallel, I think, there between being able to speak the truth into situations and to do so with love, with no expectation of return, rather than the sort of angry speaking the truth about being right and about willfully trying to control it. Or what you need to do is this, that sort of stuff. The truth is there within us, but it's trapped in our hearts of stone. And we need to open our hearts of stone and release them. And of course, there's that fantastic passage that comes from Ezekiel 36. And I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I'll put within you. And I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh, and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful in my rules. And so really our job in life is to transform our hard hearts, our hearts of stone, into hearts of flesh. And as we do so, the truth, like Excalibur, enables us to tell the truth. It's free if we have a heart, a feeling heart. It frees us to be able to see the truth and to tell the truth. And our ability to wield this truth really, it's been developed. And over the last weeks, we've talked about, we see the possibility of creating space for others. This is the journey of being able to tell the truth in these situations. We see the possibility of creating space for others, and we want to do it. And we have to do it out of love rather than trying to control a situation. We have to allow ourselves to be guided by our hearts rather than imposing the will of the mind. And we have to have, this is what we talked about last week, the capacity to tell the truth, to wield that sword, to be able to contain what's going on, and also to be able to contain any blowback that might occur when you tell the truth. And this preparation that we put ourselves through is what releases us to be able to act. It's how we pull the sword of truth from a stone that's trapped in that stone, being fixed in it through the nature of our minds, that our minds tell us that things cannot be another way. And there's also, I'm going to push this metaphor. There's also a fantastic image in the Arthurian legend of the Lady of the Lake who gives the sword. And when Arthur dies, the sword is thrown back into the lake and a hand comes up and receives it. And in John Boorman's film Excalibur, this fantastic moment where the hand comes out and receives the sword and brings it back into the lake. And that image of the lady in the lake giving and receiving the sword represents the feminine, where wisdom comes from. And in the Old Testament, wisdom is represented as a woman, Sophia. And in Proverbs, the word for wisdom is Sophia. In Proverbs, it says, wisdom mediates between the divine and the world. And in Proverbs, it says, the Lord brought me forth in the first of his works, before his deeds of old. I was appointed from eternity. This is wisdom speaking. From the beginning, before the world began. When there were no oceans, I was given birth. When there were no springs abounding with water, before the mountains settled in place, before the hills were given, before he made the earth or the fields or any other dust of the world. Wisdom was there from the beginning. Wisdom was always there. Wisdom was the spirit that hovered over the waters was that wisdom. And that wisdom is the wisdom that we're given. We can access it. That is our Excalibur. And today I want to talk a little bit about how we use that, because it's not good enough just to blunder into situations and think that we can solve them. It's something that I'm prone to do. You know, it's that Messiah nature where you think, I can solve this. And you charge into a situation, and it always gets me into trouble. You know, I always mess it up. And I see a situation, I think, well, I know what needs to be done here, and I blunder in. And often it doesn't end well. Now, I think in creating space to others, in bringing our truth to bear, in taking out that Excalibur into our hearts, we have to listen and hear what's really going on before we act. Last week, I quoted Thomas Merton, who said, "It is hearing with the Spirit, with our whole being. The hearing that's only in our ears is one thing. The hearing of the understanding is another. But the hearing of the Spirit is not limited to any one faculty, to the ear or to the mind. Hence, it demands the emptiness of all faculties. And when the faculties are empty, then the whole being listens. There is then a direct grasp of what is right before you that can never be heard with the ear or understood with the mind." That's Thomas Merton's way of hearing. We don't go into a situation with a premeditated idea of what needs to be done. All of us have these situations that we come across with our families, with our friends, with our children, where things need to be said and things need to happen. And we don't sort of go in, he says, just with our ears or our understanding. We go in and listen with our spirits. We absorb what's going on, and then we get a direct, as he said, a direct grasp of what is right before you that cannot be heard with the ear or understood with the mind. And, you know, it's not an easy thing to do. When we come across something, you know, whether it's with our friends or family or even a situation that comes to us from the outside, it often comes with so much baggage. You know, we have judgments about these people. We know where they're going wrong, and we've known for some time what they've been doing wrong. And now what has happened is what we always thought would happen, and now they're coming to us, all that sort of stuff. Their opinions about past actions, rights and wrongs. And, it is so easy to be influenced by all of that. But as Merton suggests, what's demanded is an emptiness of our faculties. When we come with that, we bring to it an empty space. And when we do that, people can respond because they're not fighting against anything. But when we come with which is what we always do, with our judgments, our ideas, our opinions, we just fill the space with more of the same. And people just react against it. And there's no room for anyone to move to a place of harmony. They have to come, I always like that word for education. The word for education comes from educare, the two Latin words, which means to draw out. And really, giving space is a function of education. You're really drawing out from them that which is within them. And when we come with that, we come with empty space. When we come with judgments and ideas and opinions, there's no room. So, what's happened? We've decided to make a difference. We've decided to create space for those around us and to give them space to find the truth. And we offer that in our love with no desire to control. We empty ourselves to allow that spirit of guidance to come through, and we work on our inner space in order to make sure that we have the capacity to contain what comes to us. And then we're ready to act. We're ready to go into the situation. And in acting, in saying something, having listened, we have agency in the decision to act. But we have no control of the fruits of our actions. So it can go either way. That's what we bring to our lives in preparation to bring harmony with those around us. We're open to hearing the Spirit from our whole being. And once we've done that, once we've emptied ourselves, then we draw the sword from the stone and we speak into the situation, not with anger, but with love. And it could be around anything that comes to us, a friend, a neighbor, a child. We find ourselves in a place where they're coming towards us with the source of some disharmony. And we have an opportunity in that moment to speak into their disharmony. Not to tell them what to do, but to create the space to allow them to find the answer themselves. And so we hear from the Spirit. And that involves courage. And often we duck it. We don't take the opportunity because we don't want to upset the apple cart. Or what we think we should say is unpalatable, either to them or to ourselves or to those around us. There are many reasons for not speaking out. But when we know what needs to be said, then to some extent, it is our duty to say it. And once we've said it, then comes the response. Now, it might be nice. Oh, that's so wise. That's just what I wanted to hear. Thank you so much for being so sensitive and speaking to me. But more likely, it's not something they wanted to hear. And the natural reaction will be to attack the messenger or to blow up in some way or another. And when that happens, we have to continue with the process. Not react back or say, well, I mean, that's what I think anyway, you can hear it or not. Not to react back with our opinions and attitudes and judgments about, or to take it personally. We have to hear the response with our spirit rather than hearing it with our ear or understanding. And then really wait for the emptiness of the Spirit to guide us as to what to say next. And the response will come. It's for this we develop the capacity to contain what's going on. We have to really be able to do that. I think it's interesting, that one of those phrases that Jesus said, "Do not suppose I've come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." Sort of another Excalibur reference. But it's really saying that, speaking into a situation is going to cause an upset on one level or another. You know, interesting, again, legend has it that on the Excalibur's blade was engraved on one side, "Take me up," and on the other side, "Cast me away." Those are the two engravings on the other side of the sword. And you wield it with the truth, and then you let go. You let go once you've spoken the truth, not holding on to a position, but taking it up fresh again. And to do that, you have to have the capacity to stand firm and to contain what comes our way. And if you hold that space long enough, it will arrive at a resolution. Although, you know, it does take time. You know, a lot of these situations are not going to be resolved by one phrase or whatever. You have to really be with these people and have it take time. Coming back to creating that space for that person over and over again, and giving them also the space in between to think about what you've said and then come back to that. I remember when I was thinking of going to the church, I'd had quite a good job, you know, in advertising. And then I went to India and sort of got into the whole spiritual bug. And much to my mother's chagrin, I gave up my good job in advertising to pursue a spiritual life. And she never really forgave me for this. And I went into the human potential movement and all that sort of stuff. And it really wasn't her cup of tea at all. So when I'd been through all this, you know, I knew it was difficult to tell her that I was now going into the church, you know. So I sort of did it gradually, you know. I used to meet her in London, and the first time I met her, I said, "Oh, I've been going to church a few times recently," you know. And then a few weeks later, I said, "Oh, you know, I've got quite involved in the local church," you know. And then another few weeks went by, and I said, "Oh, I met the bishop the other day," you know. And, "Oh, that's interesting," you know. And then I came out with it, you know, I was thinking of being ordained. And she said, "Oh, no, you know, not again. You can't get a proper job. Can't you just be a lay reader," which is someone who's not ordained but goes, you know, a different direction. Anyway, she went off from this, and she talked to her friends. She said to her friends, "Oh, Nicholas is thinking of going into the church." And her friends, of course, said, "My dear, how marvelous." And suddenly she saw that this was a completely respectable occupation. And actually, I'd sort of come back to the fold of conservative respectability that she was a member of. But it took her all that time to get to the point where she had the space to hear that this was a good idea. And, you know, I think we really have to do that, to create. And then she sent me a verse. She wrote me a letter and sent me a verse. Always remember it. She said, "Blessed are the feet of those who bring good news to the poor." And it really touched me. You know, that was a huge change from all my, "Oh dear, are you going off on another tangent?" But there was a space that was created there that, you know, that enabled her to come towards me, rather than me saying, "I'm going into the church, you can like it or lump it, it's my way or the highway," you know, that sort of stuff, which, you know, one could have done. And this was different. You know, to create that space takes time and effort. And it takes being conscious of ourselves, of hearing with our whole being, and then letting it take as long as it takes. Being prepared to stay in there with someone and being there for them. And that takes, I think, commitment and energy, which is why we have to develop the capacity to do the work. It's how we all go out there and make a difference. You know, this way of creating space for people is how we make a difference person by person, family member by family member, book club member by book club member, committee member by committee member. We become walking carriers of the Spirit in all situations. And if we're prepared and are willing to act, then we can go out and make a difference wherever we go. That's why we develop our spirituality. That's why we come together to learn how to live our lives more skillfully. We slowly, as we do this, move the dial on values that our society has. And we contribute in doing that, just to be a bit more elevated. That's how we contribute to the evolution of consciousness. And you know, we do it one moment at a time. We do it in the moment of time. The only place we can make this change is in the moment of time, which is the present moment, which is being in this moment, arriving in the present moment with somebody. When you offer them that emptiness, you're offering them the opportunity to actually be in the present moment, as we all are here. It's here that it all happens, in this moment. This moment, being in the present moment, is the hearing of the Spirit. We hear with our whole being, and then we wait and we respond. And this is the space we're creating. Now, and in this now, it'll take us wherever we want to go. Creating spaces always ends up in this present moment. We offer them the present moment, and filled with nothing, but only that which they bring to the present moment, then they're able to move and see any follies that are there within themselves. There's nothing to fight against. There's just their own minds. Hopefully they'll see it. And because we give them that nothing in the present moment, they begin to realize why there is disharmony in their lives. And that is the process that we go through with each person that we meet if we want to make that contribution.
This next song is Sicilian by Gabriel Ford.
Kat. That's so beautiful. So we're at the point in the service, we always like to, for there to be an opportunity for other voices to be heard, not just mine and Nicholas's. So, really just to open it up for a conversation, if anyone wants to share any reflection or, experience or question, anything that anyone might want to come back with to what we've heard so far this morning. And Nicholas has a mic if you want to raise your hand. Anybody? Bruce.
Great message, Nicholas. Thank you. The process you're talking about reminded me a bit of, there's a wonderful little book called Improv Wisdom, and it's about a very intense lady who got a PhD in English and wanted to do the academic track, and they said, no, you're just so in the box, forget it. You need to loosen up and do improv theater. She said, well, I'm not funny. He said, well, it's not about humor. So she did it, and she turned that into her career. She actually, through the back door, became a professor at Stanford of improv theater. And she has 12 maxims. And the first one is, say yes. The second one is, don't plan. The third one is, do show up. And the fourth one is, start anywhere. The next one is, be average, etc. And basically, it's about just spontaneously meeting people wherever they are and just, be happy to sort of go along, let them lead in a way, and stuff emerges. So, I recommend the book. It's great for kids.
And you gave it to us, Bruce, which I was
did.
grateful for. I'll just jump in here and just say I'm really tickled, actually, that Nicholas's talk kind of is such a great articulation of what, this is kind of personal to me, but I think it's relevant. Like most of my work is one-on-one, spiritual mentoring, accompaniment kind of thing. And it's literally this. It's just what you said. It's showing up. Like my whole desire and intention is to empty myself so that I can be as open and present to whatever, like to whoever, whatever is happening in the person. Like that is, whatever's happening in front of me is of utmost importance. And to give it room, to give it space, and to let go of any, just no judgment, no anything. But, this is how I think we're all called to live with everybody. So that's why I love my work. And I just feel like, this is wise living, what we're hearing, in this series and what you just said. Anybody else?
To the new members of the congregation, I'm John Bachram, and this is my wife, Liz. Welcome. And Aspen Chapel is one of the only churches that has Talkback, which could become a TV series. With 4 or 5 weeks to think about space, I thought about directly where it affects my life recently, and that would be space for healing. So I made a really long list of all the things that fall under space for healing that I'm not going to share with you now, but I'm going to give you the short list so you get the idea of my perception of healing. So it was about compulsive behavior, addiction, drugs, alcohol, abuse, psychological, physical, mental, all those things, injuries, car accidents, all those things where healing needs to take place involves space and time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thanks so much. And over here.
Good morning. We had a really special weekend. Our children got engaged this weekend here in Aspen. And to punctuate the weekend with like this with all of you is just, we don't even feel like that our feet are even here. And we've experienced a lot of grief in our lives. And I think what I got from your message was that grief excavates us to the nothingness, if we allow it. And for her beautiful son to walk into my daughter's life has been such a blessing. And the weekend was without any conflict. It was just beauty. And we all came from the nothingness. And we're all strong people. So it was pretty cool to witness that. And your meditation in the beginning, my one suggestion is please bring tissues because my sleeve is damp. And we're ready to move. We're already planning our trip back here. So thank you for welcoming us.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. Just on the grief thing, I just think that, like, we all carry so much grief, and to the extent that we can gently welcome it and lean into it and realize that grief is the other side of love, then it just, as you say, it opens up space, doesn't it? An opportunity and more loving. So, I don't know, we're so, the culture tells us to shun grief and put it to the side, but grief is like so gentling if we allow it to be. Anyway, thank you. Oh, at the back, Claire.
Claire.
I'm Claire. I'm a mother to a toddler, so every day I get a lot of amazing practice with a very big feelings coming directly at me. And there's a real inclination to immediately say, "You're okay, it's okay." And I've been practicing lately just not doing that because maybe she's not okay in that moment. And I know that there's moments that I'm not okay and it's okay to not be okay. So practicing saying, "Wow, that seems hard," or "I can see you're hurting." And just the shift that I feel internally in my own self and that I see in her when I just create that space to have the feeling that she's having, and the grace that gives both of us in that time is such a powerful lesson, and I'm so fortunate to get it every day, all day long.
Thank you. That's
Nice,
fantastic.
thanks, Claire.
Fantastic, Claire. Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, maybe we'll move on to the offertory.
So, always think it's from the sublime to the ridiculous. So,